So
company
next
and
is
not
David,
many.
and then
And
Nooni.
for other reasons, basically simplicity and not to give the court an excuse to find against us, we've decided to keep the case very simple. We have gathered and detailed a mountain of evidence to prove only two things. The one is that the COVID-19 vaccines are not effective for their stated purpose, and the second one is that they are not safe. We believe that if a court were to find for us by knocking out the fundamental lie that on the basis of which these vaccines have been promoted and mandates and everything have been done, that may send a ripple effect not only in our country but in other countries. We have relied entirely on evidence which is irrefutable. So we've used Pfizer's own evidence. We've used other official government data, including from the UK and from the United States. So we're not relying at all on our own theories or our own practice experience. We are relying on the authorities' own evidence. We are very fortunate in this that giants such as Professor Norman Fenton have written supportive affidavits in our matter. We also have supporting affidavits from Dr. Rose, Jessica Rose, Asim Malhotra, Dr. Kyriakopoulos, Dr. James Thorpe, Dr. Stephen Smith. So we have a lot of support from experts, and we believe it's a very good case. It's been difficult. The case was lodged in court already in March. So far, the case has not progressed. There are problems with funding and problems with lawyers, but we are pressing ahead and hoping that we're going to get this case into court. So what we would really appreciate is if awareness is spread about our case. Thank you, Sean.
Can I just jump in, Sean? Thank you, Dr. Herman Edlin. Such an effective speaker. It's so valuable to have you with us. I'm also aware that the idea behind this space was revolution.
Yeah.
Whether we need one or not, whether that's the right word to use. With that in mind, just trying to redirect the conversation back onto that original path. I know that Dr. Ahmed Malik, another familiar voice on these spaces, is there waiting. I wonder, Dr. Malik, do you have thoughts about revolution?
Good evening, everybody. Thanks, Neil, for that. And Herman, I wish you all the best with your court case. I had to go away because I was actually invited on a podcast. I left just after I heard Dr. Lynn Finn speak and June Slater. Sean, I just want to say I understand now why you hold Lynn Finn with such high esteem. It was actually amazing listening to her. She was so eloquent. So as a doctor, I look at society, Neil, and everybody, and I think there's a sickness. And June was saying that she talks to lay people and on the street, and they all know something's wrong. I agree. Most people I talk to can sense something deeply profound is wrong with society. But a lot of people actually really struggle to pinpoint, one, what is the problem and who is behind it. Now, if we go back to the whole diagnosis, medical kind of like analogy, if there's a sickness and illness, unless you treat the underlying root cause, and for that you need to know the diagnosis, all you're doing really is treating symptoms and patching up. If you're going to have a revolution, and your revolution is your treatment, what are you treating? What is the sickness? Who is the root cause? What is the pathogen? What is the problem? And I think that's what we need to ascertain. And I think there's a cyclical problem with humanity. We've been here before, many a time. You just need to look through the scriptures, the Bible, all the texts. This seems to be a recurring problem with humanity. I mean, Thomas Jefferson said the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. And I think he's spot on. And that was 200 years ago. So I've really thought about it. And from a diagnosis point of view and a sickness point of view, you know, you can look at intrinsic factors when it comes to the body and extrinsic factors. If I was to look at humanity, I would say the intrinsic problem is we keep making the same mistakes. We don't like to critically think. We're very lazy, and we like to abdicate our critical thinking to our betters and our superiors. We like to look for saviors and people to save us rather than save ourselves. We can be a bit too trusting and lazy. And we like to follow the herd and make sure we conform, even if it means doing the wrong thing, rather than stand alone and do the right thing. So we're very flawed in that respect. We're very trusting, and most of us are very nice and kind and good and can't think of actually doing anything evil. So we're prey to people who are the opposite to us. And unless we change and get out of this bad habit or habits, then we're going to be prey to a few individuals who don't think like us, who are happy to exploit our weaknesses. And they do. And they capitalize on it. They know our fears. They know our worries. And they use it and abuse it and exploit it. And I think really we have to look at, I think I mentioned as I dipped in and out of this space, something about the bankers. There is a group of people, bankers, who use their unimaginable amount of wealth and money to buy influence, to buy the media, to buy the politicians, to create more money, to make life unacceptably difficult for all of us, unnecessarily so. And many people have stood up and tried to fight the system and introduce independent banking that's led by the sovereign nation and not a private banking system that, you know, fuels on debt and enslaves the population. And many of the founding fathers and Andrew Jackson, one of the American presidents, fought against this and warned the people of America of the dangers of being indebted and enslaved to these private banks. And I think that's part of the diagnosis. That's the extrinsic factor. That's basically a disease and a blight on humanity. And right now they're using it through climate scams and WEF and buying our politician and big pharma. It's all money and control. How do they maintain their control over the masses and enrich themselves in the process? And in the process, they also divide and rule us. We're constantly infighting. Now,
Ahmad,
the revolution is...
can I jump in?
Yeah.
Don't you think that with so many of us, and people put different numbers on the percentage of people who are awake and people who are asleep and all of the rest of it, but don't you think in many respects we've noticed it because they have messed up hugely? They pulled the trigger, they pulled the ripcord around the time of 2020 and COVID and all the rest of it, and that was the mistake. And we have noticed it, and that the tipping point has been passed in our favour, and they are exposed, and too many of us have seen them for what they are. And the way in which things are cycling up at the moment in terms of, forever war and climate crisis and, bringing back masks and all of the rest of it is because what we are dealing with is a dying beast.
Yeah. I think they have definitely, Neil, overplayed their hand. They were rich beyond, imagination. But for whatever reason, this parasite decided to become a predator, and instead of feeding and living off our life force, decided to kill us off, because it is trying to kill us off. It's ridiculous now. It's getting to a point where it's so ridiculous everybody can see it. It is madness, and it doesn't make sense to any of us what is going on.
And that's why, don't you think, as I thought when I was putting out my tweet last week or whenever it was, That's why the time is right to revolve.
But the question is how. The question
To
is how do
change.
we revolt?
Yeah,
The question is
well,
how to revolt.
I
So,
think
for example, I'll give you an example. It's so blatant now; it's unbelievable. Pfizer, for example, have just authorized 2023-24 formula for the new COVID-19 vaccine under emergency use authorization, which means, remember, they don't need to do all the rigorous studies and trials and give all the evidence. Now, you tell me what emergency still exists. And this vaccine was only tested, I think, on 8 mice. No human studies, no controlled studies, no comparisons, no nothing, no long-term data.
I'm going to take a wild stab in the dark, Ahmad, and say that no one will take it.
Well, I hope not. But what I'm trying to say is, do you see how blatant they all are now? It's madness. But the question is, how do we fight back and extricate ourselves from this system? Because the politicians use their money, the media has their money. We need their money. We're playing this game. How do you revolt? The question, revolution, and the American founding fathers did the revolution, which they talk about blood, and I don't want it to be. I don't want any blood in the streets. I don't want that kind of revolution. But the question is, how do we revolt? How do we break out the system and say this game is rigged? This game is rigged, and we want out.
Referendum and vote against it.
Who's going to organize a referendum?
Well, we need to, it's one step at a time. September 23, there's an election at some point in 24. Some party needs to stick up its hand and say, right, we support this. And then the voters need to decide, the people, if that's what they're going to go after. And will that party get a majority? Possibly not. But could it get a significant minority, which makes it a kingmaker in Parliament, in the House of Commons? Yes. And then you play for the next. This is a long-term game, 2, 3, 4 election process. But we've got to start somewhere.
So this is where I come back to the intrinsic problem. I think we, as a people, will tolerate the slow boiling of the frog until it becomes so painful, then we revolt. And I don't think we're there yet. And I think the problem is that things have to get a lot worse and hit a lot more people before they start waking up. And that's frustrating.
Do you think, really, Ahmad, I hear you, and 50% of me thinks what you're thinking. But I also wonder if it isn't just that what we are feeling and the revolution, whatever, it's because it's the zeitgeist. It's in the air. And that what we are feeling now and what so many of us are articulating is that the time is not just right, but it has already happened in a meaningful way. And so when people say, how do we make the revolution happen? It's going to happen because there's an inevitability about it made of momentum, because right's reasserting itself.
I hope so. And I'd love to hear Thomas Binder's thoughts about this, by the way.
We're going to go to Thomas now and then to Craig Sweeney.
Yes, thank you. Ahmad and me, we are doctors, and as Ahmad said, we doctors prefer to cure the disease instead of the symptoms. And as I told earlier, the disease is the sick power structure of society, and it was always like this. We empathetic people were always ruled by a bunch of psychopaths. The media were always on their side. We were always fooled by them. But the internet gave us the possibility to realize this outside of the legacy media. And I'm hopeful. I mean, did we all here connect after JFK assassination, after 9/11, or 3 decades ago when they started the climate change nonsense narrative? No, we connected in the COVID scam. And why? I mean, they abused a nation or a religious group or whomever. But the problem of the severe narcissists is that they overstate more and more and more, and their faith is always the same. One day they overstate that much that everybody realizes this is too much. And this is the time of the downfall. And in COVID, for the first time, they abused the whole humanity. From the poorest, who threatened to starve, to the rich guy, who could not decide freely where and when he wanted to play golf. If only 1% stands up now, we are 80 million. So for the first time in history, they have the technical means to totally control us. They were always afraid of us. And of course, they want to have this total control now. But for the first time in human history, they have such a powerful opponent, us, who are connected worldwide like never before. So this is not only Professor Schwab's window of opportunity, but it is also us, our window of opportunity. And I'm hopeful. I mean, we all here, we connected. Why? We are empathetic, moral people who believe in justice. We have connected because we agree in the most fundamental human values. And we connect without being paid. I mean, imagine they have to pay every one of their lackeys. So one day, even they will run out of money. While we help each other, we connect to help each other because we are empathetic people. And I'm absolutely sure in the end we will win because the truth will always win. I don't know whether I will still be alive at that time, but I'm sure we will win. And yeah, maybe I can give just some hope. And the people, I mean, it's also not by accident that the religious people understand this much better than others. Because what we see now is really the final battle between evil and good. It's a decisive point in the history of humanity, and the good will win in the end. And if we have not won yet, it is not the end yet. Yeah, just my thoughts.
Brilliant.
Oh, Dr. Binder, that is, just listening to you fills me full of hope. And if I could, I'm so glad, as I've said before, that this is recorded and that we can all go back and look over this, because to get a second chance to consider that your words again is just so valuable. In amongst talk of revolution and all of the rest of it, what you just said there, it completely encapsulates everything that I had hoped to hear said tonight. So wonderful stuff. And so I'm wondering, Sean, who we've got next.
We got Craig Sweeney next, Craig, and then Stephen Jackson. Craig, unmute your mic, bottom left, please. Craig, bottom left on the screen, the mic.
We're all with you, Craig.
Stephen, do you want to go while Craig is looking for that, please? Stephen? Oh. Alex Mitchell, you go.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Sean, for allowing me to speak. Can I just thank Dr. Binder for an incredible speech that encapsulated everything I thought I was going to hear tonight. So thank you. You spoke about revolution by mistake. I think we're already on a revolution. It started, as you're right, about 2020. And many of us are moving forward on that journey. And I'm given hope by the fact that here we are 2.5 years later. Look at the people that's on spaces like this, talking about how we can change it for the better. The revolution started, we just don't know how we're going to finish it. And Dr. Binder's right. Justice will always prevail. And like Dr. Binder, I seriously doubt I'll be here to see it. But that's not the reasons why. The reasons we do it is because it's the right thing to do. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thanks, Alex. Very touching words. Thomas, did you want to say something more? I see your hand up. Otherwise, we'll go to Stephen Jackson.
Sorry, I tried to take it down, but it didn't work. No,
worries.
thanks.
Okay. Stephen, the floor is yours. Mic off, please. Craig, are you getting your mic ready? Stephen? Your mic's still muted. Stephen, come on, guys, we're tight here. Okay, let's go to Linda Keane.
Good evening. Thank you very much for allowing me a quick word, and I really will be quick. I've been on one of your spaces before, Sean. I just want to address Neil, and I want to thank him from the bottom of my heart for actually raising the Madaslam issue last night on GB News. My mother was one of the many thousands of elderly culled in her care home. I have spoken about this in several places, including with Mark Stein.